A woman stands on a 40th floor balcony, gripping a positive pregnancy test, but her husband has vanished into the night with another woman. In 12 hours, Lena Carter's perfect marriage will shatter. In 24, she'll walk into a restaurant owned by the most dangerous man in the city. And in 48 hours, she'll have to choose: stay invisible in a life that's killing her, or disappear with a stranger who sees everything she's tried to hide. This is her story. Hit like, comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels, and stay until the end. The penthouse smelled like expensive lies. Lena stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, her reflection pale against the city lights stretching 40 stories below. Behind her, the anniversary dinner she'd spent 3 hours preparing sat untouched on the table. Candles burned down to stubs, wine gone lukewarm in crystal glasses. The carefully plated risotto congealed into something that looked as dead as she felt. Her phone sat silent on the marble counter. No text, no call, no explanation. Adrian Cole, her husband of 3 years, hadn't come home. Again. She'd stopped calling after the 5th ring went to voicemail. Stopped texting after her messages formed a pathetic column of unanswered blue bubbles. There was a special kind of humiliation in begging someone to remember you existed, and Lena had already spent too many nights learning that lesson. Her hand moved to her pocket, fingers closing around the plastic stick she'd been carrying for 6 hours. The 2 pink lines had appeared that morning while Adrian was in the shower, singing off-key and oblivious. She'd stared at them until they blurred, until the bathroom tiles felt cold enough to freeze her through, until she heard the water shut off and had to shove the test deep into her jacket pocket like evidence of a crime. She'd planned to tell him tonight, over dinner. With the candles and the wine and the anniversary of the day, they'd promised to build a life together. Stupid. The word felt appropriate now, standing alone in a penthouse that cost more per month than most people made in a year, wearing a dress she'd bought specifically because Adrian once said he liked her in blue. She looked like someone playing dress-up in a life that didn't fit anymore. Her phone finally buzzed. She grabbed it too fast, hope and desperation tangling in her chest. Working late. Don't wait up. 5 words. Not even a mention of their anniversary. Not even a lie creative enough to respect her intelligence. Lena read the message 3 times, waiting for anger to arrive. It didn't. There was just this hollow ache spreading through her ribs, familiar as her own heartbeat. She'd felt it so many times in the past year that she'd started to think it was normal. This feeling of slowly disappearing while everyone around her kept living their lives in full color. She typed and deleted 4 different responses. It's our anniversary. Too needy. Where are you really? Too confrontational. I'm pregnant. Too important for a text message. Too vulnerable to send into a void that might not respond for hours. In the end, she sent nothing. Just set the phone down and watched it like it might suddenly transform into something that cared. The penthouse felt enormous around her, all glass and steel and expensive emptiness. Adrian had chosen it without asking her opinion, the same way he chose most things in their life together. She'd told herself it was fine, that his confidence was attractive, that she didn't need to be part of every decision. Now she wondered when exactly she'd stopped being part of any decisions at all. Lena moved through the apartment, blowing out candles, covering dishes with plastic wrap and mechanical motions that required no thought. The routine was almost comforting. She'd done this before. Cleaned up the evidence of her own expectations. Put everything away neat and tidy so Adrian wouldn't have to see what he'd missed. But tonight, something felt different. Maybe it was the pregnancy test burning a hole in her pocket. Maybe it was the way the number 3 felt. 3 years of marriage, 3 hours of waiting, 3 words she couldn't say because there was no one here to hear them. Or maybe she was just tired, bone deep, soul tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. She grabbed her coat without planning to, found herself at the door without deciding to leave. The elevator dropped 40 floors in smooth silence, and Lena watched the numbers descend like a countdown to something she couldn't name. The night air hit her face cold and sharp. October in the city meant wind that cut through expensive fabric, meant leaves skittering down sidewalks like secrets no one wanted to keep. Lena started walking with no destination in mind, just movement for the sake of not standing still. The streets were alive in that way cities are after dark. Taxis hunting for fares, couples stumbling out of bars with their hands tangled together, delivery drivers hauling bags of food to people whose lives were happening inside warm, lit windows. Lena drifted through it all like a ghost, visible but unseen, present but not quite there. Her feet carried her away from the luxury district, away from the polished storefronts and the restaurants where you needed a reservation 3 weeks in advance. She walked until the buildings got older, the streets narrower, the crowds thinner. Her phone buzzed twice, work emails that didn't matter, a text from her mother she wasn't ready to answer, nothing from Adrian. She should go home. She knew that. Should be there when he finally decided to show up so they could have whatever conversation came next. But the thought of sitting in that penthouse waiting made her skin feel too tight, made her breath come shallow and wrong. The restaurant appeared like it had been waiting for her. Tucked between a closed bookstore and a laundromat, so small she would have missed it if not for the warm light spilling from its windows. No sign out front, just an address painted in faded numbers on the brick. The kind of place you only found if you were lost or looking for something you couldn't name. Lena stopped. She shouldn't go in. She should turn around, go home, be the woman Adrian expected to find when he finally remembered she existed. But her hand was already on the door. The interior hit her like stepping into someone else's memory. Small tables with mismatched chairs, walls lined with black and white photographs of an Italy that maybe only existed in imagination, the kind of worn wood floors that had stories soaked into them. Only a few tables were occupied. An elderly couple sharing tiramisu in comfortable silence, two men in expensive suits conducting business in low voices, a woman alone reading a book that looked older than the building. And at the back corner table, a man who made the whole room rearrange itself around him. Lena felt it before she saw him clearly, the way conversations dropped half a decibel, the way the men in suits straightened slightly, the way even the air seemed to move more carefully in his vicinity. He sat alone, a glass of wine and an untouched plate in front of him, reading something on his phone with the kind of focus that suggested the rest of the world was optional. She should leave. Every instinct that had kept her safe for 26 years was screaming at her to turn around and walk out. Instead, she stood frozen as an older woman materialized at her elbow, the kind of grandmother who missed nothing and forgave even less. "Sit anywhere you like, Kara," the woman said in an accent thick as olive oil, but her eyes tracked to the corner table, to the man who still hadn't looked up, and something knowing flickered across her face. "Or perhaps you prefer a quiet table in back." Lena's voice came out rough. "Just something near the window." The woman nodded, but she was smiling like she'd heard a different answer. She led Lena to a small two-top near the front, handed her a menu written in Italian with English translations penciled in margins, and disappeared into the kitchen without taking an order. Lena tried to focus on the menu. Failed. Her attention kept sliding to that corner table, to the man who radiated the kind of power that didn't need to announce itself. He was maybe in his late 30s, dark hair starting to silver at the temples, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car. But it was his stillness that caught her, the complete lack of fidgeting, of nervous energy, of any need to fill space with movement. He looked up. Their eyes met across the restaurant, and Lena felt something shift in her chest. His gaze was dark, direct, assessing in a way that made her feel like he could see straight through the expensive dress and the careful makeup to whatever was breaking underneath. She looked away first, heat crawling up her neck. Stupid. She was married, pregnant, falling apart at the seams. This wasn't the time to be making eye contact with dangerous-looking strangers in hidden restaurants. The older woman returned with a glass of red wine Lena hadn't ordered. "I can't," Lena started. "You look like you need it, Kara. From the personal reserve, no charge." The woman patted her shoulder with a gentleness that made Lena's throat tight. "Maria takes care of everyone who finds this place, especially the lost ones." She was gone before Lena could argue. The wine sat in front of her, dark as blood in the candlelight. She shouldn't drink it, couldn't drink it. The pregnancy test in her pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric, but her hand closed around the glass anyway, lifted it to her lips. She'd have one sip, just one, just enough to feel like a person instead of a problem. The wine was perfect, rich and complex and tasting like it cost more than her anniversary dinner. She set it down carefully, guilt already pooling in her stomach. "You're not going to drink it," the voice came from directly beside her table. Lena's head snapped up to find the man from the corner standing there, close enough that she could see his eyes were almost black, could see the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow, could see the way he looked at her like he already knew every secret she was trying to keep. "Excuse me?" "The wine." He nodded at her glass. "You're holding it like you want to, but you're not going to drink it, which means either you're in recovery or you have a reason you can't." His voice was rough velvet, each word precisely placed, and he was reading her so accurately it made her feel stripped bare. "I don't know what you're talking about." The lie tasted worse than the wine. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Yes, you do." He gestured at the empty chair across from her. "May I?" "I'm married." "I didn't ask if you were available. I asked if I could sit down." He waited, eyebrow raised, and Lena realized with a start that he was actually asking permission. That despite the power rolling off him in waves, despite the way the whole restaurant had gone quieter when he stood up, he was waiting for her answer. She should say no. Should tell him to go back to his corner table and his expensive wine and whatever business he conducted in the shadows. "Okay." The word came out before she could stop it. He sat down with economical grace, folded his hands on the table, and looked at her like she was a puzzle he'd been trying to solve for years. "Dominic Varela," he said. "Not a question. A statement." "Lena." She didn't give her last name. It felt important to keep that much. "Lena." He tested the name like tasting something unfamiliar. "You walked 12 blocks in October without a real coat, wearing shoes that hurt, to a restaurant with no sign that you found by accident. And now you're sitting here with wine you won't drink, looking at your phone every 30 seconds like you're waiting for a message that won't come." Lena's chest tightened. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you're alone on what should be a special night. I know there's a tan line on your left ring finger where you've been twisting your wedding ring. I know you've been crying recently. Your mascara is perfect now, which means you fixed it, which means it needed fixing. And I know—" His eyes dropped briefly to where her hand rested protectively over her stomach, a gesture she hadn't realized she was making, "that you're carrying something heavier than loneliness." She should be angry, should be offended that this stranger was dissecting her life like it was his business. But all she felt was a dangerous relief that someone was finally seeing her. "Why are you here?" She didn't know if she was asking about the restaurant or the table or this moment. "I own it." He said it simply. "Maria is my aunt. This place has been in my family for 40 years. We don't advertise because the people who need to find it always do." "And what kind of people need to find it?" "The lost ones. The ones standing at crossroads. The ones who can't go back but don't know how to go forward yet." His gaze held hers. "Which one are you, Lena?" Her phone buzzed on the table. They both looked at it. Adrian's name lit up the screen, finally calling, and Lena felt her whole body tense with practiced response. Answer it, smooth her voice into something pleasant, pretend everything was fine. She let it go to voicemail. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. "Tell me to leave," Lena said quietly. "Tell me to go home to my husband." "Why would I do that?" "Because it's the right thing to say." "Is it?" He leaned back, considering her. "You came here looking for something, even if you don't know what it is yet. I'm not going to send you back to whatever you're running from just because someone decided that's what right looks like." Her phone buzzed again. A text this time. She didn't look at it. "I'm pregnant," she said. The words fell out of her mouth before she could stop them, landing on the table between them like broken glass. "I found out this morning. I was going to tell my husband tonight over dinner. It's our anniversary. He didn't come home." Dominic didn't react with shock or pity or any of the things she expected. He just nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. "How long has he been disappearing?" 6 months. Maybe longer. I stopped keeping track." She laughed, but it came out wrong. "I keep telling myself it's work, that he's building his career, that this is just a phase." "And do you believe that?" "No." The honesty felt like falling. "I think he has someone else. Maybe more than one someone. I think our marriage ended months ago and I'm the only one still pretending it exists." "But you're still wearing the ring." Lena looked down at her hand, at the diamond that had felt like a promise 3 years ago, and felt like a shackle now. I don't know how to take it off. Yes, you do. Dominic's voice was gentle but firm. You're just afraid of what happens after. Aren't you supposed to tell me to work on my marriage? To give him another chance? To think about the baby? Why? So you can spend the next year making yourself smaller and quieter, hoping that if you just disappear enough, he'll finally notice you're gone? He shook his head. I've seen that story before. It doesn't end well. Something in his voice made her look up sharply. There was old pain there, buried deep but not quite hidden. Who was she? Someone who waited too long for a man to become who she needed him to be. His jaw tightened. Someone I couldn't save because by the time she asked for help, there was nothing left to save. They sat in silence for a moment. Maria appeared with plates of food neither of them had ordered. Pasta in a sauce that smelled like comfort, bread still warm from the oven, olives that glistened like dark jewels. She set everything down without a word, squeezed Lena's shoulder, and disappeared again. Eat, Dominic said. Whatever you decide, you need to eat. Lena picked up her fork. The pasta was perfect, rich and savory, and tasting like someone cared whether she was fed. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first bite hit her tongue. They ate in comfortable quiet, the kind of silence that didn't need filling. Around them, the restaurant continued its gentle rhythm. The elderly couple left with soft goodnights. New customers arrived and were seated far enough away to give them privacy. Maria moved between tables like she was conducting an orchestra only she could hear. What do you do? Lena asked finally. Besides own restaurants. Dominic smiled, and it was the first real emotion she'd seen on his face. I solve problems. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give someone I just met. He set down his fork. But I'll tell you this. I'm very good at it, and I'm very particular about which problems I choose to solve. Why are you telling me this? Because you're about to ask me for help, and I want you to understand what you're asking for. Lena's breath caught. I haven't. You will. He leaned forward, and the candlelight turned his face into something carved from shadow and certainty. Before you leave tonight, you're going to tell me you need a way out, and I'm going to give you one, but only if you're sure. You don't know that. Lena, the way he said her name made it sound like a fact. Your phone has buzzed 6 times in the past hour. You haven't looked at it once. You're sitting in a stranger's restaurant eating dinner with a man you don't know, and you haven't once asked to go home. You're already gone. You just haven't admitted it yet. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table, tried to steady herself, failed. I can't just leave. I have a life, a job, an apartment. His apartment. Our apartment. Does it feel like yours? Dominic asked quietly. Does anything in that life feel like it belongs to you? The question hit like a physical blow. Lena thought about the penthouse with its glass walls and its designer furniture, about her job at Adrian's father's firm where she smiled at the right people and stayed quiet in meetings, about the friends who were really Adrian's friends, about the version of herself she'd constructed to fit into a space that was never meant for her. No, she whispered. Then it's not a life, it's a performance, and you're exhausted. Tears burned behind her eyes. She blinked them back hard, refused to cry in front of this stranger who saw too much. What are you offering? A way out, clean, complete, permanent. You walk away tonight, and I make sure you stay gone. New city, new name if you want it, new start. No one finds you unless you want to be found. Why would you do that for me? His eyes went distant, seeing something she couldn't. But because someone should have done it for her, and because I can. I don't understand. You don't have to, not yet. He pulled a card from his pocket, slid it across the table. Heavy cardstock, no logo, just a phone number printed in simple black ink. Keep this. Think about what you want, and if you decide you're ready to disappear, call me. Lena stared at the card like it might explode. This is insane. Yes, I don't know you. No, you could be anyone. This could be... She didn't even know how to finish that sentence. It could. Dominic stood, buttoned his jacket with practiced ease. But you're still going to keep the card. And when your husband comes home and proves me right about who he is, you're going to call that number. You seem very sure of yourself. I'm sure of him. Men like Adrian Cole are easy to read. They take until there's nothing left, and then they're surprised when someone finally walks away. There is so subapans de soul. He looked down at her, and for a moment his expression softened into something almost gentle. You deserve better than disappearing slowly, Lena. You deserve to burn bright enough that the whole world has to see you. He turned to leave, made it 3 steps before she spoke. Wait. He stopped but didn't turn around. How do you know his name? I never told you his name. Now he looked back, and his smile was sharp enough to draw blood. I know a lot of things. That's why I'm good at what I do. He paused. Your husband's family is into business they shouldn't be into, the kind that draws attention from people who don't ask nicely. You being connected to him makes you vulnerable. You carrying his child makes you a target. So when you call me, and you will, understand that I'm not just offering you an escape. I'm offering you protection from things you don't even know are hunting you yet. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they settled into her bones like they'd been waiting there all along. Dominic left without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Lena was alone again with cold pasta and a business card that felt like a grenade with the pin already pulled. She sat there for a long time, turning the card over in her fingers. Her phone kept buzzing. She kept ignoring it. Maria brought her espresso she hadn't ordered, a slice of lemon cake that tasted like someone's grandmother made it with love and secrets. He's a good man, Maria said as she cleared plates. Complicated, but good. Whatever he offered you, he means it. You don't know what he offered. Don't I? The old woman smiled. This restaurant has seen a lot of crossroads, Kara. A lot of people choosing between who they were and who they could be. Dominic, he helps the ones who are brave enough to choose. I'm not brave. At all was he's. You walk 12 blocks in the cold to have dinner alone in a strange restaurant. You're carrying a baby and facing a future that terrifies you. And you're still sitting here instead of running back to something comfortable that's killing you. Maria squeezed her hand. That's not bravery. That's survival. And survival is what you do when brave isn't enough. Lena paid her bill with cash, left a tip that was probably too much, and stepped back out into the October night. The walk back to the penthouse felt longer, heavier, like she was dragging the weight of a decision she hadn't made yet. The elevator ride up 40 floors gave her too much time to think. The hallway to the apartment stretched out forever. Her key turned in the lock with a click that sounded like a countdown ending. Adrian was home. He stood in the kitchen, tie loosened, pouring whiskey into a glass like this was any other night, like he hadn't missed their anniversary, like she hadn't spent 6 hours carrying news that would change everything. There you are, he said without looking up. Where'd you go? Out. Lena set her purse down carefully, pulled out the pregnancy test she'd been carrying all day, and placed it on the marble counter between them. We need to talk. Adrian looked at the test. His face went through several expressions in quick succession, confusion, understanding, and then something that made Lena's stomach drop. Annoyance. Are you serious right now? He set down his glass. Jesus, Lena, I told you I wasn't ready for this. You told me a lot of things. Her voice was steadier than she expected. You told me you loved me, that you wanted to build a life together, that we were partners. We are partners, but a kid right now? With everything going on at work? He ran his hand through his hair, frustration bleeding into anger. This is the worst possible timing. It's our anniversary, Adrian. He blinked like he'd forgotten, which he had. Shit. Look, I'm sorry, okay? Things have been crazy and I... Where were you tonight? The question hung in the air between them. Adrian's jaw tightened. I told you, working late. Liar. The word came out quiet but absolute. Adrian's eyes flashed. Excuse me? You're lying. You've been lying for months, maybe longer. Lena felt something cracking open inside her chest, something that had been sealed tight for too long. And I've been letting you. Pretending I don't smell perfume that isn't mine. Pretending I don't see the texts you delete. Pretending I'm not disappearing while you build whatever life you're actually living. Lena, I'm pregnant. She said it louder this time. With your child. And you can't even pretend to care. Adrian's face hardened into something she didn't recognize. Then get rid of it. The silence that followed was so complete that Lena could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the whiskey settling in Adrian's glass, could hear the exact moment when whatever remained of her marriage shattered into pieces too small to ever put back together. What did you just say? You heard me. Adrian picked up his drink, downed it in one swallow. We're not ready for a kid. I'm not ready, so handle it. Handle it. Lena repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. You want me to just... It's your body, your choice, right? He poured more whiskey, and his hand was shaking slightly. Good. He should be shaking. Look, I'll pay for it. Whatever you need, just make this go away. Something in Lena went very still, very cold, very clear. She looked at her husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing a face she used to love. Saw a man who had taken 3 years of her life and left her with nothing but emptiness and a child he wanted her to erase. Okay, she said quietly. Adrian looked relieved. Okay, good. I'm leaving. His expression shifted. What? I'm leaving you tonight. Lena pulled off her wedding ring, set it next to the pregnancy test on the counter. They looked strange together, symbols of promises that had turned into lies. I'll be gone by morning. Don't try to find me. You're being dramatic. No. She met his eyes, and she didn't flinch. I'm being clear. For the first time in our marriage, I'm telling you exactly what I need. And what I need is to never see you again. Adrian laughed, but there was panic underneath it. You can't just leave. Where are you going to go? You have nothing without me. Maybe that's true. Lena picked up her purse, felt the weight of Dominic's card in her pocket. But nothing is better than this. She walked toward the bedroom, started pulling clothes from drawers and shoving them into a suitcase. Adrian followed, his voice rising with each step. You're insane. You can't do this. My father gave you that job, this apartment, everything. Your father gave me a cage. Lena zipped the suitcase closed. And you gave me nothing but reasons to leave. If you walk out that door, you lose everything. She stopped at the threshold, looked back at the penthouse one last time. Glass walls, expensive furniture, a life that had never been hers. I already lost everything. I just didn't notice until tonight. She was in the elevator before Adrian could respond, down 40 floors while her heart hammered against her ribs. Out into the October night with one suitcase and a business card and a future that was terrifying and unknown. Lena pulled out her phone, pulled out the card, stared at the number printed in simple black ink. She could still go back, could apologize, could smooth everything over, could become small enough to fit back into that beautiful cage, could erase this moment and the baby and herself until there was nothing left but the ghost of who she used to be. Or she could call. Her fingers moved before her mind could catch up. The phone rang once, twice. Lena! Dominic's voice came through clear and certain, like he'd been waiting. Where are you? I don't know. She looked around at the street corner, at the lights blurring through tears she hadn't realized were falling. I left him. I told him I was pregnant, and he told me to get rid of it, and I left. Good. No hesitation. Tell me where you are. I'll come get you. I don't understand why you're helping me. You don't have to understand. Not tonight. She heard movement on his end, the sound of a car door, an engine starting. You just have to trust that when I say you're safe now, I mean it. Lena gave him the intersection, hung up, stood there with her suitcase and her shattered life, and waited for a stranger who had looked at her like she mattered. 15 minutes later, a black car pulled up to the curb. Dominic got out, and in the streetlight he looked exactly like what he was, dangerous, powerful, and somehow the safest thing she'd seen all night. Last chance, he said as he took her suitcase. You get in this car, there's no going back. Good. Lena climbed into the passenger seat. I don't want to go back. I want to disappear. Dominic smiled, and it was sharp and certain and full of promises he'd actually keep. Then let's make you vanish. The car pulled away from the curb, and Lena watched the city lights blur past the window. Somewhere behind them was a penthouse full of everything she was leaving. Somewhere ahead was a future she couldn't see yet. And sitting next to her was a man who had looked at her across a restaurant table and seen everything she'd been trying to hide. The pain, the pregnancy, the desperate need to be something more than invisible. For the first time in years, Lena felt like she was finally moving towards something instead of away from everything. Whatever came next, it had to be better than slowly dying in a life that had stopped seeing her. It had to be. The car smelled like leather and something else. Gunpowder, maybe, or just the particular scent of controlled danger. Lena sat in the passenger seat watching the city scroll past, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. She'd stopped crying somewhere around the third block, when the adrenaline started wearing off and reality set in like a cold fog. She'd left. Actually left. Her wedding ring was sitting on a marble counter next to a pregnancy test, and she was in a car with a man she'd met 3 hours ago, driving toward a future she couldn't even begin to imagine. "You're thinking about going back," Dominic said without looking at her. "How do you—" She stopped. "Never mind. It's normal. You just blew up your entire life. Your brain is going to spend the next few days trying to convince you that you made a mistake." He took a turn onto a street she didn't recognize. "But you didn't. You seem very confident about that." "I am." He glanced at her briefly. "Tell me what he said, after you showed him the test." Lena's throat tightened. "He told me to get rid of it, handle it, like it was a problem instead of a—" She couldn't finish. "A child." "Yeah." Dominic's jaw tightened, and she saw his hands flex on the steering wheel. Men like Adrian don't understand the value of things until they're gone, and by then it's too late. "Is that what happened to you?" He was quiet for a long moment. The car turned again, heading away from this downtown core toward neighborhoods Lena had never visited. Her name was Elena. Different spelling, same sound. She was with someone who promised her the world and gave her nothing but excuses. By the time she asked me for help, He stopped, and the silence that followed was heavy enough to drown in. "I was too late. I've spent the past 5 years making sure I'm never too late again." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just don't waste the chance she didn't get." He pulled onto a tree-lined street where the houses sat far back from the road, hidden behind gates and walls. "We're here." Lena looked up at the estate that materialized out of the darkness. It was massive, not in the flashy way of Adrian's penthouse, but in the solid, old money way of buildings that had stood for generations and would stand for generations more. Stone walls, iron gates that swung open as they approached, security cameras she could see, and probably a dozen she couldn't. "This is your house?" "One of them." Dominic parked in a circular driveway, killed the engine. "The most secure one. No one gets past those gates unless I want them to." He was out of the car before she could respond, grabbing her suitcase from the back. Lena climbed out on shaking legs, looked up at the house, and felt the full weight of what she'd done crash down on her shoulders. "I can't stay here." "You can't go anywhere else." Dominic walked toward the front door, then stopped when he realized she wasn't following. "Lena, look at me." She did. In the security lights, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. "You made the hard choice tonight. You chose yourself and your child over a man who would have destroyed you both. Now comes the harder part. You have to keep choosing it, every day, every moment you think about going back." He set down the suitcase. "I'm offering you safety. Time to figure out what comes next, that's all. You don't owe me anything except honesty about what you need. What do you get out of this? Peace." The word came out rough. "Knowing that this time I didn't fail." Lena picked up her suitcase and followed him inside. The interior matched the exterior, old wealth, solid furniture, art that looked like it belonged in museums. But there were also signs of life scattered throughout. A jacket thrown over a chair, books stacked on side tables, a coffee cup someone had forgotten to clean. It made the place feel less like a fortress and more like a home. A woman appeared at the top of the stairs, older, gray-haired, wearing a cardigan despite the perfectly controlled temperature. She took one look at Lena and her expression shifted into something fierce and protective. "Another lost one, Dominic?" "Rosa, this is Lena. She'll be staying in the East Wing. She's pregnant, exhausted, and needs food that isn't restaurant pasta. He turned to Lena. Rosa runs this house. She also raised me, which means she's survived worse than anything you can throw at her. Charming as always. Rosa came down the stairs with surprising speed. Come, Kara, let's get you settled. Men are useless at this part. Dominic raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Rosa took Lena's suitcase like it weighed nothing and headed up the stairs, talking the whole way. The East Wing has its own bathroom, small kitchen if you want privacy, sitting room with good light. Dominic had it renovated last year after... She stopped, cleared her throat. After the last guest. You'll be comfortable there. Last guest? A girl, 17, running from her father. Rosa's voice hardened. She stayed 3 months until we could get her paperwork sorted, then moved to Seattle. Sends Dominic a postcard every Christmas with pictures of her daughter. They reached a door at the end of a long hallway. Rosa opened it to reveal a suite that was bigger than the apartment Lena had lived in before Adrian. Cream-colored walls, furniture that looked antique but comfortable, windows overlooking gardens she couldn't quite see in the darkness. Bathroom through there. Kitchen through there. If you need anything, press the button by the bed and I'll come. Otherwise, I'll bring breakfast at 8. Rosa set down the suitcase, studied Lena with eyes that missed nothing. You made the right choice, leaving. You don't know what I left. I know what you found here, that's enough. She squeezed Lena's hand. Sleep. Tomorrow will be difficult enough without exhaustion making it worse. She was gone before Lena could respond, the door clicking shut with a finality that made everything real. Lena stood in the center of the room, surrounded by someone else's furniture and someone else's safety, and felt herself start to shake. It started in her hands, spread up her arms, consumed her whole body, until she was trembling so hard she had to sit down. The tears came next, huge, ugly sobs that tore out of her chest like they'd been waiting years to escape. She cried for her marriage, for the baby she was carrying, for the version of herself she'd lost somewhere along the way. Cried until there was nothing left but exhaustion and the hollow ache of knowing that tomorrow she'd have to figure out how to build a life from nothing. Eventually she showered, changed into pajamas that felt wrong in this grand room, and crawled into a bed that was too soft and too big and too foreign. Sleep should have been impossible. Instead, she dropped into darkness so complete that when she woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, she couldn't remember where she was for a panicked 30 seconds. Then it all came rushing back. The restaurant, the conversation, Adrian's face when he told her to handle it, Dominic's eyes when he promised her safety. A knock at the door pulled her upright. Come in. Rosa entered with a tray that smelled like heaven, fresh bread, eggs cooked in butter, fruit that looked like it had been picked that morning, tea that steamed in a delicate cup. Eat. Rosa set the tray on the bed. All of it. You're feeding 2 now. I don't usually eat breakfast. You do now. Rosa pulled open curtains, flooding the room with October sunlight. Dominic wants to see you when you're ready. No rush. But there are things you need to know. The food was perfect. Lena ate mechanically, tasting nothing, feeling her body relax slightly as actual nutrition hit her system. When had she last eaten a real meal? Yesterday's pasta didn't count. Before that, she couldn't remember. She dressed in jeans and a sweater that felt too casual for this house, then followed Rosa's directions down to what turned out to be Dominic's office. He stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian that sounded like threats wrapped in silk. When he saw her, he ended the call mid-sentence. Look better. I look like I spent the night crying. That too. He gestured at a chair. Sit. We need to talk about what happens next. Lena sat. Her hands found each other in her lap, twisted together like they were trying to keep her from flying apart. Adrian called me 17 times last night, Dominic said without preamble. Left 6 voicemails. The first 3 were angry, the last 3 were worried. This morning he filed a missing persons report. Lena's stomach dropped. What? He's claiming you're mentally unstable, that you threaten self-harm, that he's worried for your safety and the safety of his unborn child. Dominic's voice was flat, clinical. It's a smart play. Makes him look like the concerned husband. Makes you look like the problem. But that's not... I know. But it doesn't matter what's true. It matters what he can make people believe. Dominic moved to his desk, pulled out a folder. Adrian's family isn't just wealthy, they're connected. His father, Marcus Cole, runs a pharmaceutical company that's currently under investigation for price fixing and illegal testing. The family has ties to organized crime in 3 states, and Adrian himself is being watched for money laundering through shell companies. Lena felt the room tilt. That's impossible. Adrian's he works in finance. His father makes medication. His father makes medication, inflates the prices until people die because they can't afford it, and then hides the profits through a network of companies that exist only on paper. Dominic slid the folder across the desk. Adrian is one of the people managing those companies, which means the people investigating his father are also investigating him, which means you being connected to him makes you interesting to some very dangerous individuals on both sides of the law. Lena opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were documents she couldn't fully understand. Corporate structures, wire transfers, names of companies she'd never heard of. But one thing was clear. Adrian's life was nothing like what he'd shown her. How did you get this? I told you, I solve problems. That requires information. Dominic leaned against his desk. The question is what you want to do with it. I want to never see him again. That's not an option anymore. He's made you part of his story. The missing wife. Possibly unstable, possibly in danger. He's going to look for you. And when his family realizes you might know things that could hurt them, they're going to look harder. Fear crawled up Lena's spine. I don't know anything. He never told me about any of this. They don't know that. And even if they believe you, you're still a loose end. Pregnant with a Cole heir. That makes you valuable or dangerous, depending on how they want to play it. So what am I supposed to do? Lena's voice cracked. I can't go back. I won't. But if what you're saying is true, you stay here. Dominic said it like it was simple. Under my protection, until we figure out how to make you disappear properly. For how long? As long as it takes. Lena looked around the office, at the expensive furniture, the security monitors showing every angle of the property, the gun she could now see in a drawer that hadn't been fully closed. Who are you really? Someone who understands how power works, how to use it, how to make people disappear when they need to. He met her eyes. I'm not a good man, Lena. I've done things that would horrify you, but I keep my promises, and I promised you safety. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care what happens to me? His expression shuddered. I told you. Elena, no. That's not all of it. Lena stood up, exhaustion making her reckless. You don't build an operation like this, gather intelligence like this, because of one woman you couldn't save. There's something else. For a long moment, Dominic just looked at her. Then he smiled, and it was the saddest thing she'd seen on his face. You're smarter than you think you are. Adrian really did a number on you, making you forget that. He turned back to the window. My mother was like you, married to a powerful man who made her smaller every day. She tried to leave when I was 12. He found her, dragged her back, spent the next 3 years making sure she knew she was nothing without him. His voice went flat. She died when I was 15. The coroner called it an accident, but I knew. We all knew. Dominic, I was too young to save her, too weak, too powerless. He turned back and his eyes were dark with old rage. I spent the next 20 years making sure I'd never be powerless again, building resources, building connections, building a network that could move people, hide them, protect them from the monsters wearing expensive suits. He gestured at her. So yes, Elena was the catalyst, but this started long before her, and it won't end until men like your husband stop thinking they own the women who trust them. The silence that followed was heavy with shared pain. Lena wanted to say something comforting, but there was nothing to say. His mother was dead. Elena was dead. And Lena was alive only because she'd gotten lucky enough to walk into the right restaurant at the right time. I'm sorry, she said finally. Don't be. Use it. Dominic pulled out his phone, pulled up a photo, showed her. This is Adrian 2 hours ago, outside your building, talking to reporters. Lena looked at the image. Her husband, ex-husband, she had to start thinking of him that way, stood in front of cameras looking appropriately worried, disheveled just enough to seem genuine. The caption below read, "Husband pleads for missing wife's safe return." "He's really committed to this story," she said. "He has to be. If you surface and contradict him, he looks like a liar. If you stay missing, he's the tragic husband. Either way, he controls the narrative." Dominic put the phone away. "Unless we give people a different story." "What kind of story?" "One where you're not missing, where you left because your husband was abusive, controlling, and involved in criminal activity, where you feared for your safety and your child's safety." He watched her carefully. "But that story requires you to go on record, to file for divorce, to possibly testify if the investigation into his family goes that far." Lena's hands moved to her stomach, protective. "If I do that, they'll come after me." "Yes. They'll try to hurt me, hurt the baby. They'll try." Dominic's voice went hard. "They won't succeed." "How can you be sure?" "Because I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm very good at it." He moved closer. "But I need you to understand what you're choosing. If you stay hidden, you're always running, always looking over your shoulder, always afraid. But if you fight back, if you go public with what you know and what he is, you take away his power. You become the one controlling the narrative. I don't know anything. I told you. You know he told you to abort his child. You know he's been unfaithful. You know he isolated you from friends and family. You know he controlled your finances, your job, your entire life." Dominic ticked off each point. "That's enough to start with. The rest we can build." "This is insane." "Yes. But so is spending the rest of your life hiding from a man who thinks he owns you." Lena walked to the window, looked out at gardens that were stunning in the morning light. Somewhere out there, Adrian was playing the worried husband. His family was plotting how to handle the problem she represented. And she was here, in a stranger's house, trying to decide between running forever or standing and fighting. "What if I'm not strong enough?" "You left him." Dominic came to stand beside her. "He even did." "Dominic's. You walked away from everything you knew with one suitcase and a stranger's business card. You're stronger than you think. You just need to remember how to use it." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She'd turned it back on that morning, a mistake she immediately regretted. Text after text had flooded in, from Adrian, from his parents, from coworkers who'd seen the news. All of them variations on the same theme. "Where are you? Are you okay? Please come home." Not one of them said, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I should have been better." She pulled out the phone, looked at Adrian's name lighting up the screen with another call. "Let me talk to him," Dominic said quietly. "What?" "Answer it. Put it on speaker. Let me talk to him." His eyes were calculating. "I want to hear what he sounds like when he's scared." Lena's finger hovered over the accept button. This was a terrible idea. But then again, everything she'd done in the past 12 hours was a terrible idea, and she was still breathing. She answered, "Put it on speaker." "Lena, thank God." Adrian's voice poured out, relief and worry expertly blended. "Where are you? Are you safe? Everyone's been so worried." "She's fine." Dominic's voice cut through like a knife. "Better than fine, actually." Silence. Then, "Who the fuck is this?" "Someone who actually cares whether she lives or dies, which is more than you can say." Dominic's tone was conversational, almost friendly. "Your wife is safe, Adrian. She's staying somewhere you'll never find, and she's not coming back. You son of a... Put Lena on, now. She's right here, listening to you prove exactly why she left." Lena watched Dominic's face, saw the cold calculation there. He was enjoying this, she realized, twisting the knife. "Lena, baby, please. I'm sorry about last night. I was stressed and I said things I didn't mean. Just come home and we can talk about this, about the baby, about everything." Adrian's voice shifted, went softer. "I love you. You know that. I'm just worried about you." "Worried about her, or worried about what she might say?" Dominic asked. "Because your family's been making a lot of calls this morning, very interested in where Lena might have gone, who she might be talking to, what she might know." Another pause. When Adrian spoke again, the warmth was gone. I don't know who you are or what you think is happening here, but you're making a very big mistake. My wife is confused, possibly unstable. She needs help, not some stranger filling her head with, she needs a divorce lawyer, which she'll have by end of business today. Dominic smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut. And probably a restraining order. Given your documented history of emotional abuse and infidelity, you can't prove any of that. Want to bet? Dominic glanced at Lena. Your husband has been sleeping with his assistant for 8 months. Caroline Mitchell, 24 years old, lives in apartment 3B at the Meridian building. He's been paying her rent since March. Should I go on? Lena felt the floor drop out from under her. 8 months. Caroline had been at their Christmas party, had smiled at Lena and complimented her dress, and the whole time she was, Lena, don't listen to him. He's lying. He's also been seeing a woman named Rebecca Torres, twice a week at the Grandview Hotel. And before you claim that's business, I have photos that suggest otherwise. Adrian's breathing changed, got harder. Who the fuck are you? I'm the person standing between you and what you think you're entitled to. Dominic's voice dropped. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call off your missing persons report. You're going to tell the media you were mistaken, that your wife is safe and has asked for privacy during a difficult time. And you're going to start looking for a good lawyer, because the divorce filing hits tomorrow morning. She has no grounds for divorce. I've been a perfect husband. Perfect husbands don't tell their pregnant wives to get rid of the baby. Or did you forget that conversation? Dominic looked at Lena. Anything you want to add? She should say something. Should tell Adrian what she thought of him, of his lies, of the 3 years she'd wasted believing she was the problem. But looking at the phone, hearing his voice, all she felt was exhausted. I'm done, Adrian. That's all. I'm just done. You can't do this. You signed a prenup. You get nothing. I don't want your money. I just want you gone. And the baby? His voice went cold. That's still my kid. I have rights. You gave up your rights when you told her to abort. Dominic's tone could have frozen water. But if you want to fight for custody of a child you didn't want, that's your choice. Just know that every text, every voicemail, every documented instance of you telling Lena to get rid of it will be entered into evidence. Family court judges love fathers who order their wives to abort. This isn't over. Yes, Dominic said quietly. It is. You just don't know it yet. He ended the call. The silence that followed felt enormous. Lena sat down hard, her legs giving out. 8 months, Caroline, I worked with her. I invited her to our home. I know. And Rebecca, I don't even know who that is. A lawyer. Works at the firm that handles your husband's family business. Dominic pocketed the phone. I'm sorry you had to hear it that way. How did you know? About all of them? I had someone looking into Adrian the moment you told me his name. By the time we got here last night, I had a full profile. He crouched in front of her chair. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but after that call, I think you needed to know exactly what you're walking away from. He never loved me. No, he loved the idea of you, the perfect wife who made him look good, who didn't ask questions, who disappeared whenever he needed her to. Dominic's voice gentled. But that was never you. That was just a role you played until you couldn't anymore. Lena looked at him, this dangerous stranger who'd blown up her life and caught her when she fell. What happens now? Now you rest. Tomorrow we file for divorce. The day after that, we start building your new life. He stood. But today, you just survived. That's enough. Rosa appeared in the doorway like she'd been summoned. Lunch is ready, and doctor's appointment is at 3. Doctor? For the baby, Dominic said. You need prenatal care. Rosa found someone discreet, someone who won't ask questions or file paperwork that could be traced. You've thought of everything. That's what I do. He headed for the door, then paused. Lena, you did the right thing, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. You did the right thing. He left her there with Rosa, who helped her to her feet and guided her toward lunch like she was something fragile that might break. And maybe she was. Maybe she'd been breaking for years and just hadn't noticed until Dominic held up a mirror and made her look at what was left. But broken things could be repaired, could be made stronger at the seams. At least, that's what she told herself as she ate lunch in a stranger's house, carrying a baby she'd chosen over a husband who'd never chosen her, protected by a man whose motivations she still didn't fully understand. It had to be true. Because if it wasn't, she'd just traded one cage for another, and this time she'd walked into it with her eyes wide open. The doctor's office was in a part of the city Lena had never seen. Tucked above a bakery, accessed through an unmarked door that required a code Dominic punched in without hesitation. The waiting room held exactly 3 chairs and smelled faintly of antiseptic and bread from downstairs. Dr. Sarah Chen met them at the door, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and hands that moved with practiced efficiency. She shook Lena's hand, nodded at Dominic like they'd done this before, and led them into an examination room that was small but clean. "How far along?" Dr. Chen asked as she washed her hands. "Maybe 6 weeks? I'm not sure." Lena sat on the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath her. "I only found out yesterday." "We'll do an ultrasound, get a better idea." Dr. Chen pulled on gloves. "Any bleeding, cramping, nausea?" "Nausea, mostly in the mornings." "That's normal. Good, actually. Means your hormones are doing what they should." She glanced at Dominic, who'd positioned himself by the window like he was on guard duty. "You can wait outside if you'd prefer." "I'm fine here," Lena said before Dominic could move. She wasn't sure why she wanted him to stay, only that the thought of being alone right now made her chest tight. The examination was quick and professional. Dr. Chen asked questions Lena answered as honestly as she could, made notes on a tablet, and then pulled over the ultrasound machine. "This might be cold," she warned as she squeezed gel onto Lena's abdomen. It was. Lena flinched, then forced herself still as Dr. Chen moved the wand across her skin. The screen filled with gray and black shapes that meant nothing to Lena's untrained eye. Then Dr. Chen stopped, adjusted something, and pointed. "There!" A tiny flicker, so small Lena almost missed it. "That's the heartbeat," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Strong. You're measuring at about 7 weeks, give or take a few days." 7 weeks. Lena stared at the screen, at the impossible small flutter of life that had somehow taken root inside her. She'd known she was pregnant, the test had been clear enough, but this was different. This was real in a way that made her breath catch. "Everything looks good," Dr. Chen continued. "I'll want to see you again in a month. In the meantime, prenatal vitamins, lots of water, small meals if the nausea is bad, and try to reduce stress where you can." Lena almost laughed at that last part. Reduce stress. Right. She'd just blown up her entire life, was hiding from a family with criminal connections, and was carrying a baby whose father had told her to abort it. But sure, less stress. Dr. Chen printed out a grainy image and handed it to Lena. "Your first picture." Lena took it with shaking hands. The blob on the page didn't look like much, just a smudge of white against black. But it was hers. Theirs. A whole person waiting to happen. "Thank you," she managed. Back in the car, Lena couldn't stop looking at the ultrasound image. Dominic drove in silence, occasionally glancing over but saying nothing. Finally, as they pulled up to a red light, he spoke. "You're keeping it." It wasn't a question. Lena folded the image carefully, tucked it into her purse. "I was always going to keep it, even before I left. I just didn't know how." "And now?" "Now I still don't know how, but at least I'm not doing it alone." The light turned green. Dominic accelerated smoothly. "You're not alone. That's a promise." They drove past the turnoff to the estate. Lena sat up straighter. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere you need to see." 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a building that looked like it had been beautiful once. Red brick worn smooth by weather, tall windows that caught the afternoon light, fire escapes zigzagging down the facade like scars. The neighborhood was rough around the edges, but not dangerous. The kind of place where working people lived and didn't ask too many questions. Dominic led her inside up 3 flights of stairs that creaked with each step to a door with 3 deadbolts. He unlocked them one by one, then pushed it open. The apartment inside was empty, but clean. Hardwood floors, big windows overlooking the street, a kitchen that was old but functional. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom with subway tile, Radiators that would probably clank all winter but would keep the place warm. "This is one of my properties," Dominic said as Lena walked through, her footsteps echoing. "Fully paid off, no mortgage. The building is owned by a trust that can't be traced back to me or you. The utilities are paid through an account that's completely separate from anything connected to your old life." Lena turned to face him. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you need to know you have options. You can stay at the estate as long as you want. But eventually, you're going to want your own space, your own life. This could be it, if you want." She looked around the empty apartment, tried to imagine herself here. Furniture she'd choose herself. Pictures on the walls. A nursery in the second bedroom. A life that belonged to her and no one else. "I can't afford this." "It's not about affording it. I'm offering it to you, free and clear. Your name on the deed, or whatever name you want to use." He leaned against the doorframe. "You said you wanted to disappear. This is how you do it. New identity, new address, new life. Adrian and his family will never find you here." "What's the catch?" "No catch. Just one condition. You let me help you. You don't try to do this alone." His voice went hard. "Because alone is how you end up back with him, or worse." Lena walked to the window, looked down at the street below. Kids playing on the sidewalk, an old man walking a dog, a woman carrying groceries. Normal life happening all around, people who had no idea how close she'd come to losing herself completely. "I don't understand you," she said without turning around. "You barely know me. Why are you doing all this?" "I told you. Elena, your mother. I know." She faced him. "But this is more than guilt or making up for the past. You've spent money, time, resources on me. A stranger. There has to be a reason." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved into the apartment, stood a few feet from her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "The world is full of powerful men who think they own people," he said finally. "Men like your husband, like his father, like the one my mother married. They take and take until there's nothing left, and then they're surprised when someone finally breaks." He looked at her directly. "I can't fix the whole world, but I can make sure that when someone asks me for help, I'm not too late. I'm not too weak. I'm not standing there watching while someone disappears because the man who was supposed to love them decided they were disposable." "So this is what you do? Save people?" "I solve problems. Sometimes that means saving people. Sometimes it means other things." His jaw tightened. "I'm not a good person, Lena. I've hurt people, killed people, done things that would make you run if you knew the details. But I have rules, lines I don't cross. And one of those lines is women and children. They're off limits, always." Lena should be terrified, should be backing away from this admission. Instead, she felt something settle in her chest. Because for all his danger, for all the darkness she could sense beneath the surface, Dominic had been nothing but honest with her, more honest than Adrian had ever been. "If I take the apartment, what happens? You live your life. I make sure you're safe while you do it. Eventually, when the heat dies down and Adrian's family has bigger problems to worry about, you won't need my protection anymore. But until then, I'm not going anywhere." "And the baby?" "What about the baby?" "Adrian's going to want custody, or his family will. A Cole heir. You said it yourself. I'm valuable because of that. They can want whatever they'd like. Wanting and getting are different things." Dominic's voice went cold. "By the time we're done, Adrian won't have the standing to fight for custody, and his family will be too busy dealing with federal charges to worry about a grandchild." "You sound very sure of that." "I am. The investigation into Marcus Cole's company has been building for 2 years. They're close, very close. All they need is the right push to make arrests, and I'm very good at pushing." Lena's breath caught. "You're going to, what, turn them in?" "I'm going to make sure the evidence that already exists finds its way to the right people, and that when it does, it buries them so deep they'll never see daylight again." He smiled, and it wasn't kind. "Your husband's family built an empire on the backs of sick people who couldn't afford medication. They've destroyed lives, ended lives, all for profit. They deserve what's coming." "This isn't just about me." "No, but you're the catalyst. You asked for help. That gave me permission to act." He moved toward the door. "Think about the apartment. You don't have to decide now. But it's here when you're ready. They drove back to the estate in silence. Lena's mind spun with everything she'd learned, everything she was beginning to understand. Dominic wasn't just protecting her. He was using her situation to take down people who'd been untouchable for too long. She should be angry about that, should feel manipulated. Instead, she felt something that might have been hope. The next 3 days passed in a blur. The divorce papers were filed with a lawyer Dominic knew, a woman named Patricia Grant, who had a reputation for destroying husbands in court. Adrian's lawyer responded with threats and demands, all of which Patricia shut down with emails so cutting, Lena almost felt sorry for whoever was on the receiving end. Almost. The restraining order came next, temporary for now, but enforceable. Adrian was to stay at least 200 feet from Lena at all times. No contact. No communication except through lawyers. He violated it within 12 hours. Lena was in the estate's garden, trying to read a book and failing, when her phone rang from an unknown number. She should have let it go to voicemail. Instead, muscle memory made her answer. "I know you're with him." Adrian's voice sent ice through her veins. Lena stood up, looked around like he might be watching. "You're not supposed to call me. I don't give a fuck what some court order says. You're my wife. Ex-wife. As of 2 days ago when you signed the papers." Those papers don't mean anything. We're married. We took vows. You can't just throw that away because some criminal convinced you to. He didn't convince me of anything. You did that yourself when you told me to get rid of our baby. I was stressed. I said things I didn't mean. But we can fix this, Lena. Just come home. We'll talk. We'll figure this out together. His voice had shifted into that careful, concerned tone that used to work on her. Used to make her doubt herself, question her own memory of events. But now, with distance and clarity, she could hear the manipulation beneath it. No. No? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you can just say no to me? You think your new boyfriend is going to protect you forever? He's not my boyfriend. And yes, I think I can say no to you. I think I can say a lot of things I should have said years ago. Like what? Adrian's voice hardened. That you're an ungrateful bitch who threw away everything I gave you? That you're mentally unstable and unfit to raise a child? That you're spreading lies about me and my family to cover up your own? Lena hung up. Her hands were shaking, her heart racing, but she felt something fierce and bright burning in her chest. She'd hung up on him, just ended the call while he was still talking. It felt incredible. The phone rang again immediately. She blocked the number. It rang from a different number. She blocked that one too. By the fifth blocked number, she turned the phone off completely and went to find Dominic. He was in his office, surrounded by papers and monitors, talking in low tones to a man Lena had never seen before. Tall, scarred, built like he could break someone in half without trying. Both men looked up when she entered. The stranger's hand moved toward his waist, then stopped when Dominic shook his head slightly. "Lena, this is Marcus. He handles security." Dominic's eyes scanned her face. What happened? Adrian called, 5 times, different numbers each time. She held out her phone like evidence. He's violating the restraining order. Good. Dominic took her phone, handed it to Marcus. Get these numbers traced, find out where he's calling from, and put alerts on her accounts. If he tries to access anything, I want to know immediately. Marcus nodded and disappeared without a word, taking Lena's phone with him. She stood there feeling exposed without it, even though she'd just been ready to throw it in the garden pond. He said he knows I'm with you, she told Dominic. He's guessing. He doesn't know anything. He called you a criminal. Technically accurate. Dominic gestured at the chair across from his desk. Sit. Tell me everything he said. Lena recounted the conversation as precisely as she could remember. Dominic listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each sentence. He's desperate, Dominic said when she finished. That's good. Desperate people make mistakes. He said I'm spreading lies about him and his family. You haven't said anything to anyone except your lawyer, which means his family is worried about what you might know, even if you don't actually know it. He pulled up something on his computer. The federal investigation is accelerating. They're moving faster than I expected. Marcus Cole's company had 3 executives resign this week. Their general counsel filed for immunity yesterday. The whole thing is collapsing. Because of me? Because of them. their own greed, their own crimes. You're just the match that lit a fire that was always going to burn. He looked at her carefully. But Adrian's right about one thing. His family is going to blame you. They're going to see you as the catalyst for their destruction, which means the threats are going to escalate. What kind of threats? As if in answer, the window behind Dominic exploded. Glass showered across the office. Lena screamed, threw herself sideways as Dominic moved faster than she'd ever seen anyone move. He grabbed her, pulled her behind the desk, covered her body with his as another window shattered, then another. "Stay down," he ordered, his voice deadly calm despite the chaos. Lena pressed herself to the floor, hands over her head, trying to make sense of what was happening. Gunshots. Someone was shooting at the house, at them. More glass breaking, the sound of car alarms going off. Then sudden, absolute silence. Dominic was on his phone, speaking rapid-fire commands in a language Lena didn't recognize. Footsteps thundered through the house, Marcus and others, securing the property, checking for damage. "Are you hurt?" Dominic asked, his hands moving over her shoulders, her arms, checking for injuries. "I don't think so. What just happened?" Someone sent a message. His jaw was tight with rage. A very stupid message. Marcus appeared in the doorway, gun drawn. 3 shooters, SUV, they're gone. No casualties on our end. Get me everything. Plates, footage, anything. Dominic helped Lena to her feet, guided her away from the broken glass. "And double the security. No one gets within a mile of this property without us knowing." Rosa rushed in, took one look at Lena, and immediately went into protective mode. "Come, Kara. Let's get you checked over properly, away from all this." Lena let herself be led to her room, where Rosa examined her for cuts and found only a few superficial scratches from the glass. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She kept seeing the window explode, kept hearing the sharp crack of gunfire. "They tried to kill me," she said numbly. "They tried to scare you." Rosa cleaned the scratches with gentle efficiency. "If they wanted to kill you, they would have used different weapons, different tactics. This was theater, intimidation. It worked. I'm terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you careful." Rosa finished bandaging a cut on Lena's arm. "But don't let it keep you frozen. Dominic will handle this." "How can you be so calm?" "Because this isn't the first time someone has attacked this house, and it won't be the last." Rosa's eyes were hard. Dominic has enemies, many enemies. They try things, they fail, they disappear. This is how his world works. I brought this to his door. "No, Kara, you brought yourself to his door. The violence was always going to find him. You're just one more reason for him to do what he does best." Rosa squeezed her hand. "Rest now. Tomorrow will be difficult enough." But Lena couldn't rest. She sat in her room listening to the sounds of cleanup, of security protocols being implemented, of Dominic's voice issuing orders that sounded like declarations of war. Eventually, she couldn't take it anymore. She went back downstairs to find him. He was standing in what remained of his office, surveying the damage. Plywood already covered the broken windows. The glass had been swept up, but the bullet holes in the walls remained, dark punctures in the expensive plaster. "I'm sorry," Lena said from the doorway. Dominic turned. "For what?" "For bringing this to you, for putting you in danger, for—" "Stop." He crossed to her. "This isn't your fault. You didn't pull the trigger. You didn't send those men here. Adrian's family did. And they just made a very serious mistake." "What mistake?" "They attacked someone under my protection. In my home. That's not a warning. That's a declaration of war." His eyes were cold, calculating. "And they're going to learn that I'm very good at war." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done the moment you walked into Maria's restaurant." He pulled out his phone, made a call. "It's time. Send everything we have to the federal prosecutor. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence. I want Marcus Cole arrested before sunrise." He hung up, made another call. "Patricia, it's Dominic. I need you to file an emergency motion for full custody. Yes, tonight. Grounds are that Adrian Cole and his family pose an immediate physical threat to both mother and child. We have documentation of the attack. I'll send photos." Another pause. No, I don't care what it costs. Just make sure by tomorrow morning Adrian doesn't have any legal standing to go near Lena or the baby. Call after call. Orders given. Pieces moved on a board Lena couldn't fully see. She watched him work, this dangerous man who'd taken her broken life and turned it into ammunition against people who'd thought themselves untouchable. You could have let me go, she said when he finally stopped. When they shot at your house. When this became too complicated. You could have sent me away. I could have, Dominic agreed, but I didn't, and I'm not going to. Why? He looked at her for a long moment. Because the moment you walked into that restaurant, you became mine to protect. And I don't abandon people I've promised to protect. Not ever. Not for anything. The words should have scared her. The possessiveness, the certainty, the implication of ownership. But all Lena felt was safe. Safer than she'd felt in years. What happens now? Now we wait. By morning, Marcus Cole will be in federal custody. His company will be seized, his assets frozen, and Adrian will be scrambling to save himself instead of hunting you. Dominic gestured at the bullet holes. They made this personal. They brought violence to my door. They're going to regret that more than anything they've ever done. And me? What do I do? You stay alive. You keep that baby safe, and you let me handle the rest. It should have felt wrong letting someone else fight her battles. But Lena was exhausted from years of fighting alone, of making herself smaller, of pretending she was strong enough to handle things she was never meant to handle alone. Maybe it was okay to let someone else carry the weight, just for a little while, just until she found her feet again. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. Dominic smiled, and it was the first warm thing she'd seen on his face since the shooting. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be interesting. Lena went back to her room, but sleep was impossible. She lay in bed listening to the house settle, to the security team doing rounds, to the distant sound of the city beyond the walls. Her hand rested on her stomach, on the life growing there despite everything. We're going to be okay, she whispered to the baby who couldn't hear her yet. We're going to make it through this. She wanted to believe it, needed to believe it, because the alternative was too terrifying to consider. Somewhere out there, Adrian was planning his next move. His family was scrambling to contain the damage, and Lena was caught in the middle of a war she hadn't asked for but couldn't escape. But at least this time, she wasn't fighting alone. At least this time, she had someone who looked at her and saw a person worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth burning the world down to keep safe. It wasn't love. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was enough. For now, it was enough. Morning came with headlines that made the attack on Dominic's estate look like a footnote. Lena sat in the kitchen, coffee she couldn't drink cooling in front of her, staring at Rosa's tablet. The news was everywhere. Every major outlet, every local station, trending across social media with a speed that suggested careful orchestration. Pharmaceutical executive Marcus Cole arrested on federal charges. Multi-million-dollar fraud scheme exposed. Coal Industries under investigation for price fixing, illegal drug testing. The photos showed Marcus Cole in handcuffs being led from his mansion at dawn. His wife stood in the doorway, face frozen in shock. And there, in the background of one shot, was Adrian, disheveled, panicked, talking frantically on his phone. Dominic did this, Lena said quietly. Rosa poured herself coffee, sat down across from her. Dominic gave the prosecutors what they needed, what they should have had months ago. The rest was inevitable. It doesn't feel inevitable. It feels like revenge. Can it be both? Rosa asked. The evidence was real. The crimes were real. People died because Marcus Cole decided their lives were worth less than his profit margins. Justice and revenge look the same when the person getting punished actually deserves it. Lena's phone, the new one Marcus had given her yesterday, completely untraceable, buzzed with a text from Patricia Grant. Emergency custody hearing scheduled for 2 p.m. today. Judge reviewed evidence of attack. Adrian's petition for custody denied pending investigation. You're clear. Relief flooded through her so intense she had to put her head down on the table. The baby was safe. Adrian couldn't touch them. Whatever came next, that much was secured. Good news? Rosa asked. The best. Lena looked up. Where's Dominic? Handling things. He'll be back soon. But it was 3 hours before Dominic returned, and when he did, he looked exhausted in a way Lena hadn't seen before. Not physically tired, he still moved with that controlled grace. But there was something heavy in his eyes, something that suggested he'd been doing things he didn't want to think about. He found her in the library, attempting to read a book she'd grabbed at random. She hadn't processed a single word. It's done, he said without preamble. Marcus Cole is in federal custody. His company is being dismantled. Adrian's accounts are frozen pending investigation into his role in the scheme. And your custody hearing went exactly as planned. I heard. Lena set down the book. Are you okay? The question seemed to surprise him. Why wouldn't I be? Because you just destroyed a family, even if they deserved it, even if it was justice. That can't be easy. Dominic sank into the chair across from her, and for the first time since they'd met, he looked his age. I've destroyed worse families for worse reasons. The Coles are hardly innocent victims. That's not an answer. He was quiet for a moment. No, it's not easy. It never is. But it's necessary, and I'm the one willing to do necessary things when everyone else looks away. Is that what you tell yourself? To make it easier? I don't need to make it easier. I just need to make sure it gets done. He met her eyes. You asked me once why I do this. This is why. Because men like Marcus Cole exist. They hurt people, destroy lives, and hide behind money and power and lawyers. Someone has to stop them, and I have the resources to be that someone. What about Adrian? What about him? He's going to be arrested too, isn't he? Dominic nodded slowly. The federal prosecutor is building a case. It'll take a few weeks, maybe a month. But yes, Adrian's going down with his father. Well, Lena should feel something about that. Satisfaction, maybe. Or vindication. Instead, she just felt empty. He really didn't love me, did he? Not even a little. I don't think Adrian knows how to love anyone except himself. That's not your failure. It's his. 3 years. I gave him 3 years of my life. And now you get the rest of your life back. That's not nothing. Dominic leaned forward. Lena, I need to tell you something about the shooting yesterday. Her stomach dropped. What about it? We traced the vehicle, found the shooters. They were hired by someone in Marcus Cole's organization, a man named Vincent Torres. He's been the family's fixer for 20 years. Handles problems they can't solve legally. And I was a problem. You were. Past tense. Dominic's voice went flat. Vincent Torres was found dead this morning. Apparent suicide. Single gunshot to the head in his apartment. Lena's hands went cold. Apparent suicide. That's what the police report will say. But it wasn't suicide. Does it matter? Dominic asked quietly. He ordered an attack on you. On a pregnant woman. On my home. There are consequences for those actions. You killed him. I didn't pull the trigger, but I gave the order. He didn't look away, didn't flinch from her reaction. I told you I wasn't a good man. This is what I meant. I protect the people I promised to protect, and I eliminate threats to those people. That's who I am. Lena should be horrified, should be running from this room, this house, this man who just admitted to murder without a trace of remorse. But all she could think about was the window exploding, the terror of those moments when she thought she was going to die, the way Dominic had covered her body with his own. Thank you, she said. Dominic blinked. What? Thank you for keeping me safe, for doing what needed to be done. She met his eyes. I know I should be shocked, scared maybe, but I'm not. I'm just grateful that someone finally cared enough to actually protect me instead of just saying they would. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. Surprise maybe, or recognition. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who'd fall apart, who'd need constant reassurance, who'd run the moment things got difficult. He shook his head slightly. But you're stronger than that. You've been through hell this past week and you're still standing, still fighting. I'm not fighting. You're doing all the fighting. No. You left him. You chose yourself and your baby over a life that was killing you. That took more courage than anything I've done. He stood, moved to the window. Adrian called me this morning. Lena's breath caught. What did he say? That I'd ruined his life, destroyed his family, turned you against him. Dominic's voice was dry. He seemed to think I'd seduced you away from him, that this was all some elaborate scheme to steal his wife. That's insane. That's Adrian. Everything is about him, even his own destruction. Dominic turned back to face her. He also said he'd make me pay, that I'd regret ever getting involved in his business. He threatened you? He tried. It was pathetic, honestly. A drowning man making threats he has no power to enforce. Dominic's jaw tightened. But it tells me something important. He's desperate, and desperate men do stupid things. You think he'll try something? I think he's already tried. The shooting yesterday? That was Marcus Cole's people. But Adrian knew about it. Maybe didn't order it directly, but he knew and didn't stop it. Dominic pulled out his phone, showed her a text message thread. My contacts in the police department found these on Vincent Torres's phone before they officially discovered the body. Lena read the messages, her stomach turning with each line. Adrian and Vincent discussing the attack. Adrian saying Lena needed to be scared, needed to understand she couldn't just walk away, needed to come home where she belonged. He wanted me terrified. He wanted you broken. Again. Dominic put the phone away. The difference is this time, there's evidence. These messages are going to the prosecutor, along with everything else we have on Adrian. By the time they're done with him, he'll be lucky to get 20 years instead of life. Good. The word came out harder than Lena intended. He deserves it. Yes, he does. Dominic watched her carefully. How are you feeling, really? Lena took inventory, exhausted, angry, scared, but also something else, something that felt almost like relief. I feel like I can finally breathe, like for the first time in years I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Adrian's going to fight. His family's going to fight. The media is going to dig into everything. Let them dig. They won't find anything because I didn't do anything wrong. Lena stood, moved closer to him. I'm tired of being afraid, tired of hiding. If Adrian wants a war, then let's give him one. Dominic smiled, and it was sharp and approving. There she is. There who is. The woman who walked into my restaurant and refused to drink wine she couldn't have. Who left her husband in the middle of the night with one suitcase and no plan. Who's been surviving on pure stubbornness for the past week. He touched her face gently, just his fingertips against her jaw. You've been so busy being scared that you forgot you're terrifying. I'm not terrifying. I'm pregnant and homeless and completely dependent on you for everything. You're pregnant and brave and strong enough to burn down your entire life when it wasn't working anymore. That's terrifying to men like Adrian. They can't control women who realize they don't need to be controlled. His hand was still on her face. Lena should step back, should put distance between them, should remember that this was a business arrangement and nothing more. But she didn't want to. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she wanted to be touched, wanted to be close to someone who actually saw her. Dominic, she started, not sure what she was going to say. He dropped his hand, stepped back. You should rest. You have the custody hearing this afternoon. Patricia will meet you there. The moment broke. Lena felt it shatter like the windows yesterday, sudden and complete. Right, the hearing. I'll drive you. Marcus will follow in a second car just in case. In case of what? In case Adrian is stupid enough to try something in public. Dominic was already moving toward the door, back to business. Get ready. We leave in an hour. He was gone before Lena could respond, leaving her alone with the echoes of whatever had almost happened between them. The custody hearing was held in a windowless conference room that smelled like fear and furniture polish. Patricia Grant sat beside Lena, radiating professional competence in a suit that probably cost more than Lena's car. Across the table, Adrian's lawyer, a nervous man named Robert Chen, shuffled papers and avoided eye contact. Adrian himself wasn't there. Patricia had explained that given the restraining order and the recent arrest of his father, the judge had ruled his presence unnecessary and potentially inflammatory. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it just felt hollow. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Margaret Torres, no relation to Vincent Torres, Patricia had assured her, who looked like she'd heard every lie and seen every trick in the family court playbook. "Let me make sure I understand the situation," Judge Torres said, reading from the file in front of her. Mrs. Cole left her husband after he allegedly told her to terminate her pregnancy. The husband filed a missing persons report claiming she was mentally unstable, then violated the restraining order by calling her multiple times from different numbers. And then someone, allegedly connected to the husband's family, fired multiple shots into the home where Mrs. Cole was staying. "That's correct, Your Honor," Patricia said smoothly. "And Mr. Cole's father was arrested this morning on federal charges." "Also correct. Mr. Chen, does your client seriously expect me to grant him custody rights given these circumstances?" Robert Chen cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my client maintains that Mrs. Cole is being manipulated by—" "I don't care what your client maintains. I care about the safety of this child." Judge Torres looked at Lena directly. "Mrs. Cole, do you believe your husband poses a danger to you or your unborn child?" "Yes," Lena said. Her voice was steady. "I believe if I hadn't left when I did, I would have terminated the pregnancy because he demanded it, and I believe he would have made my life miserable if I'd refused. Do you have evidence of this demand?" Patricia slid a folder across the table. Phone records showing the conversation took place, and an affidavit from Mrs. Cole detailing exactly what was said. Judge Torres read for several long minutes. Her expression grew progressively more disgusted. Finally, she closed the folder and looked at Robert Chen like he was something she'd scraped off her shoe. Petition for custody denied. Petition for visitation denied. Mr. Cole is prohibited from any contact with Mrs. Cole or the child, both before and after birth, until such time as he can demonstrate to this court's satisfaction that he poses no danger to either party. She signed something with sharp, angry strokes. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full psychological evaluation before Mr. Cole is even eligible to petition for custody modification. And given the ongoing federal investigation, I expect that won't be happening anytime soon. Your Honor, Robert Chen started weakly. "We're done here." Judge Torres stood. "Mrs. Cole, I wish you the very best, and I suggest you get as far from the Cole family as possible." "I intend to, Your Honor." Outside the courthouse, Lena felt like she could finally breathe. Patricia was already on her phone, firing off emails to people Lena didn't know. Marcus stood nearby, scanning the area with professional paranoia. And Dominic was watching her with something that might have been pride. "You did well in there," he said. "I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do." He guided her toward the car. "We should celebrate dinner, somewhere nice. Is that safe?" "I own the restaurant. We'll have the whole place to ourselves." He opened the car door for her. "Besides, you deserve one night where you're not looking over your shoulder." Dinner turned out to be at Maria's, the same restaurant where this had all started. But tonight, it was empty except for them. Maria herself cooked, bringing out course after course of food that tasted like love and careful attention. Wine for Dominic, sparkling water for Lena, and conversation that felt almost normal. "Tell me something about yourself," Lena said halfway through the main course. "Something real. Not about work or Elena or any of this." Dominic considered the question. "I wanted to be a teacher." "What?" "Before all this, when I was younger, I wanted to teach history. Thought maybe I could help kids understand how the world got to be the way it is." He smiled at her expression. "Don't look so surprised. I wasn't always this person." "What changed?" "My mother died, and I realized teaching history wouldn't change the fact that powerful people keep hurting powerless people. So I became powerful enough to do something about it." He took a drink. "Not exactly the career path my guidance counselor recommended." "Do you regret it?" "Every day. But I'd do it again anyway because the alternative is standing by and watching while people suffer." He set down his glass. "Your turn. Tell me something I don't know." Lena thought about it. "I wanted to be a writer, stories, novels, anything that let me create worlds where things turned out right. But Adrian said it wasn't practical, said I needed a real job, something stable. So I went to work for his father and stopped writing. Do you still want to write? I don't know, maybe, if I can remember how. She looked at the table, at the remains of the meal they'd shared. I feel like I forgot a lot of things while I was with him, forgot who I was before I became who he needed me to be. Then figure it out again. You have time now, and space, and no one telling you who you're supposed to be. Except you. I'm not telling you who to be. I'm just making sure you stay alive long enough to figure it out yourself. Vi ipuati. He leaned back. There's a difference. Maria brought dessert, tiramisu that melted on the tongue, espresso that smelled like heaven. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. And for the first time since leaving Adrian, Lena felt something that might have been peace. Thank you, she said as they were leaving, for all of this, for everything. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You didn't have to help me. You could have told me to leave your restaurant and never thought about me again. But you didn't. No, Dominic agreed. I didn't. Why? Really? Not the story about Elena or your mother. Why me? Why did you decide to turn your whole life upside down for a stranger? He was quiet for so long, Lena thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, just as they reached the car, he spoke. Because when you walked into that restaurant, you looked exactly how I felt when my mother died. Lost, desperate, like you disappeared so completely that you weren't sure if you'd ever existed at all. He opened the car door but didn't help her in. And I thought if I could save you, maybe it would mean she could have been saved too, that someone like me could have existed when she needed them. Dominic, I know it doesn't make sense. I know it's not rational, but I'm not doing this for rational reasons. I'm doing it because for the first time in 5 years, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. He finally looked at her. You matter, Lena. Not because of what happened to you, but because of who you are when you're not being destroyed by someone who's supposed to love you. Lena didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to respond to this dangerous man who'd seen her at her lowest and decided she was worth saving. So she did the only thing she could think of. She kissed him. It was supposed to be quick. A thank you. An acknowledgement. But the moment her lips touched his, something ignited between them. Dominic pulled her closer, his hand tangling in her hair, and Lena let herself fall into it. Let herself feel wanted and seen and real for the first time in years. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. That was a mistake, he said quietly. Probably. You're vulnerable. I'm the person protecting you. This is a terrible idea. I know. We should forget this happened. We should. Lena pulled back slightly. Are we going to? No, Dominic said. I don't think we are. They drove back to the estate in charged silence. Lena's mind spun with everything that had happened, everything that was still happening, everything that might happen next. She was pregnant with her ex-husband's baby. Her ex-husband's family was being destroyed by federal investigators. She was living in this home of a man who'd just admitted to ordering someone's death to protect her. And she'd just kissed him. This was insane. All of it. Every single piece of it was wrong and complicated and destined to explode in her face. But for the first time in 3 years, Lena felt alive. Felt like herself. Felt like the choices she was making were hers and no one else's. That had to count for something. Back at the estate, Dominic walked her to her door. They stood there awkwardly, like teenagers after a first date. Good night, Lena. Good night. He turned to leave, made it 3 steps before she spoke. Dominic? What happens now? With us, I mean. He looked back. I don't know, but I think we should probably figure it out carefully, because once we cross certain lines, there's no going back. Maybe I don't want to go back. Maybe I don't either, but we need to be sure. You need to be sure. He moved closer again. You're building a whole new life. Don't let me become another man who makes decisions for you. What if I want you to be part of that life? Then I will be, in whatever way you need. He touched her face again, gentle and careful, but only if you choose it, not because you're grateful or scared or dependent on me for safety, because you actually want me there. I think I might, Lena admitted. Want you there, I mean, but you're right, I need to be sure. Then take your time. Figure out who you are when you're not running or hiding or surviving. And when you know, we'll talk about what comes next. He kissed her forehead. Sleep well. This time when he left, Lena let him go. She went into her room, changed into pajamas, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Her hand rested on her stomach, on the baby growing there despite everything. Your life is going to be so weird, she told the baby. But I promise it'll be better than weird. It'll be safe and real, and full of people who choose to be there instead of people who are trapped there. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you've won. You haven't. This isn't over. Adrian. It had to be. Even from whatever hole he'd crawled into, he couldn't let her go. Couldn't accept that she'd actually left. Lena took a screenshot of the message, sent it to Patricia and Dominic, then blocked the number. Tomorrow, it would be more evidence. More proof that Adrian Cole was exactly what they said he was. But tonight, it was just words from a man who no longer had any power over her. And that, Lena thought, as she finally drifted off to sleep, was the best victory of all. The threatening text turned out to be Adrian's last desperate gasp. By the time Lena woke the next morning, he'd been arrested trying to board a private plane to the Cayman Islands with 2 suitcases full of cash and falsified documents. The news showed him in handcuffs, shouting at reporters that he was innocent, that this was all a setup, that his wife had orchestrated everything out of spite. Lena watched the footage over breakfast, feeling absolutely nothing. The man on the screen looked like a stranger wearing Adrian's face. How had she ever believed she loved him? He's claiming you're part of some conspiracy, Rosa said, refilling Lena's orange juice. That you and Dominic planned this together to steal his money and destroy his family. Let him claim whatever he wants. No one's going to believe it. Lena pushed away the tablet. When does the divorce finalize? 2 more weeks. Patricia says it's the fastest she's ever processed one. But given the circumstances, the judge is expediting everything. Rosa sat down across from her. And then what, Kara? What happens when all of this is over? That was the question, wasn't it? Lena had spent 3 weeks living in Dominic's estate, protected and provided for, existing in a strange limbo between her old life and whatever came next. The baby was growing. She was 11 weeks now, past the worst of the morning sickness, starting to show just enough that her regular clothes felt wrong. But she still didn't know what her life looked like once the dust settled. I don't know, she admitted. I've been thinking about the apartment Dominic showed me, the one in his building. It's a good space, safe, close enough that we can help if you need it, far enough that you have your own life. That's what scares me, my own life. I'm not sure I remember how to have one of those. Rosa reached across the table, squeezed her hand. Then you learn, one day at a time, one choice at a time. That's all anyone does. Dominic found her later that afternoon in the garden, attempting to read, but mostly just watching the way sunlight moved through the trees. He'd been giving her space since the kiss, maintaining a careful distance that felt both respectful and frustrating. They'd see each other at meals, exchange pleasantries, discuss logistics of the divorce and the ongoing investigation. But nothing personal, nothing real. Adrian's being held without bail, he said, settling onto the bench beside her. Flight risk, they said. Also, the $2 million in cash and the fake passport to Mexico helped make their case. Mexico, not the Caymans? The Caymans were a decoy. He had 3 different escape routes planned. Dominic's voice held a trace of grudging respect. He's smarter than I gave him credit for, just not smart enough. Will he go to prison? Yes. The prosecutor has him on money laundering, fraud, conspiracy. Minimum 15 years, probably closer to 25 with his father's sentence factored in. He looked at her carefully. How do you feel about that? Lena thought about it. Relieved, sad, angry that it took all this for him to face consequences, but mostly just tired of thinking about him. Good. You should be tired of it. You've earned the right to move on. Have I? She set down the book she hadn't been reading. Sometimes I feel like I'm just running away. Like I should have tried harder to make the marriage work. Or stood up to him sooner, or... Stop. Dominic's voice was firm. You're not responsible for fixing a man who didn't want to be fixed. You're not obligated to stay in a situation that was destroying you. And you're sure as hell not required to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Is that what your mother did? Set herself on fire? every day for 15 years. And I watched it happen because I was too young and too powerless to stop it. He stared out at the garden. I swore I'd never watch that happen again. That's why I do what I do, not because I'm some kind of hero, because I'm still that angry 15-year-old boy who couldn't save his mother. You're not that boy anymore. No, I'm worse. I'm what that boy became when he decided anger was more useful than grief. He turned to face her. You asked me once why I helped you. I gave you part of the truth. But here's the rest. I saw myself in you. The person I could have been if someone had helped me before the anger took over. Before I became someone who solves problems with violence and intimidation and whatever it takes to win. You think you're a bad person. I know I'm a bad person. I've done terrible things, hurt people, killed people, built an empire on fear and force. His voice was matter-of-fact. But I can use that to protect people who need protecting, so maybe I'm bad in a useful way. Lena reached for his hand before she could overthink it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid. You're not bad. You're just someone who got hurt and decided no one else should hurt the same way if you could prevent it. That's not evil. That's just human. You have more faith in me than I deserve. Maybe you deserve more faith than you give yourself credit for. She squeezed his hand. I've been thinking about what you said, about taking time to figure out who I am, what I want. And I think I want to take the apartment, start fresh, build something that's actually mine. She took a breath. But I also think I want you in my life, not as a protector or a savior, just as someone who sees me and doesn't need me to be anything other than what I am. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. That's all I've ever wanted to be for you. Then why are we sitting here pretending there's nothing between us? Because I'm terrified of becoming another man who takes from you instead of giving. Because you're vulnerable and pregnant and recovering from trauma, and I don't want to be the person who takes advantage of that. He looked at their joined hands. Because I've never felt this way about anyone before and I have no idea how to do it without breaking everything. You think you'll hurt me. I know I'll hurt you eventually. I hurt everyone I care about. It's what I do. Then hurt me honestly instead of with distance. Lena shifted closer. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be present. To stop protecting me from yourself when what I actually need is for you to be real with me. Lena, I'm scared too, she interrupted. I'm terrified that I'm making another mistake, that I'm confusing gratitude with something else, that I'm going to wake up one day and realize I traded one cage for another. She forced herself to meet his eyes. But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what could have happened if I'd been brave enough to try. Dominic pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers like he had that night outside the restaurant. If we do this, we do it right. No secrets, no games, no pretending to be something we're not. I can agree to that. And you move into the apartment like you planned. Build your own life. I'm part of it, but I'm not all of it. Okay? And if it doesn't work, if you wake up one day and realize this was a mistake, you tell me. You don't just disappear. You don't make yourself smaller to avoid conflict. You tell me the truth, and we deal with it. You're setting a lot of ground rules for someone who's supposed to be taking a chance. I'm setting ground rules because I care enough to want this to last. He kissed her softly, carefully, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. I'm falling in love with you, Lena Carter. And that terrifies me more than anything I've ever done. Good, she whispered against his lips. Fear means it matters, means it's real. They stayed in the garden until the sun started to set, talking about things that had nothing to do with Adrian, or danger, or the past. Dominic told her about the restaurant empire his Aunt Maria had built, about his plans to expand the protection network he'd created, about the teaching degree he'd never finished but still thought about sometimes. Lena told him about the stories she used to write, about wanting to travel somewhere she'd never been, about hoping her daughter, because somehow she knew it was a daughter, would grow up braver than she'd been. You're already brave, Dominic said. You just forgot for a while. 2 weeks later, the divorce was final. Lena signed the papers in Patricia's office, feeling nothing but relief as she watched her lawyer file them away. Adrian had signed from jail, his lawyer managing to negotiate a deal where he gave up all parental rights in exchange for Lena not testifying at his trial. It was a coward's bargain, but Lena took it. She didn't want Adrian anywhere near her child. The apartment was move-in ready by the end of the month. Dominic had it furnished simply but well, comfortable furniture, a kitchen stocked with basics, a nursery painted soft yellow with a crib Rosa had apparently been saving for exactly this purpose. Lena stood in the middle of her new living room, surrounded by boxes she'd packed herself, and felt something that might have been hope. "It's perfect," she told Dominic, who was watching her with poorly concealed nervousness. "You're just being polite. I'm being honest. For the first time in years, I have a space that's completely mine, that I chose, that no one can take away from me." She turned to face him. "Thank you for all of it. You're going to stop thanking me eventually, right?" "Probably not. You should get used to it." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Lena let herself fall into it. Let herself believe that this could work, that she could build a life here with this complicated, dangerous man who looked at her like she was worth protecting. The pregnancy progressed. Lena's body changed in ways that were sometimes terrifying and sometimes wonderful. Dominic was there for all of it. The doctor's appointments where they learned the baby was healthy and growing, the nights when Lena couldn't sleep and needed someone to talk to, the moments when fear would crash over her and she'd need reassurance that she could actually do this. "You're going to be a great mother," he told her one night when she was 17 weeks along and spiraling about everything she didn't know. "How can you be sure?" "Because you already love that baby more than Adrian ever loved anything in his entire life. Because you chose her over a man who told you to get rid of her. Because you're building a life that's honest and real instead of pretty and fake." He placed his hand over her stomach, where the baby was just starting to show. "She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have you." "Yeah, you are." He was smiling, though. "I'm pretty great. And humble." Humility is overrated. They fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Lena started writing again. Nothing serious, just journal entries and short stories she showed no one but Dominic. He encouraged it, buying her a laptop and a desk that overlooked the street, telling her that the world needed her words, even if she wasn't ready to share them yet. She started therapy with a trauma specialist Dr. Chen recommended, working through the 3 years with Adrian and the damage he'd done to her sense of self. It was hard, painful work, but necessary. Rosa became a constant presence, showing up with food Lena didn't have to cook and wisdom she didn't have to ask for. Maria invited her to the restaurant once a week, feeding her dishes that made her want to cry with how good they tasted. Marcus taught her basic self-defense, insisting that she needed to be able to protect herself even with Dominic's people watching over her. "You never know when you'll be alone," Marcus said during one of their sessions. "Better to know you can handle yourself." Lena learned how to throw a punch, how to break a hold, how to run when running was the smart choice. It made her feel powerful in a way she'd never experienced before. Adrian's trial came and went. Lena didn't attend, but she followed the news coverage. He was sentenced to 23 years for his role in his father's schemes. Marcus Cole got 35. The empire they'd built was dismantled, assets seized, money returned to the people they'd hurt. It wouldn't bring back the lives lost to their greed, but it was something. Adrian's final message came through Patricia's office, a letter he'd written from prison. Patricia brought it to Lena when she was 25 weeks pregnant, belly round and impossible to hide, baby kicking constantly like she was already impatient with the world. "You don't have to read it," Patricia said. But Lena did. She opened it right there in her apartment, Dominic standing beside her in case she needed him. The letter was short. No apology. No acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just Adrian, still convinced he was the victim, that Lena had ruined his life out of spite and malice. He hoped she was happy. Hoped the baby would grow up knowing what kind of mother she had. Hoped Dominic would realize what kind of woman Lena really was before it was too late. Lena read it twice, then tore it into pieces and threw it away. "He's never going to understand," she said to Dominic. "He's going to die in prison still believing he did nothing wrong." Probably. Men like Adrian rarely have moments of clarity. Dominic pulled her close, careful of her belly. "Does it bother you?" "No. I used to think I needed him to understand, to acknowledge what he did. But I don't. I just need to move forward without him." And she did. One day at a time, one choice at a time, Lena built a life that was entirely hers. She wrote more, eventually working up the courage to submit a short story to a literary magazine. They accepted it. The publication paid almost nothing, but seeing her words in print made her feel real in a way she hadn't felt in years. Dominic was there through all of it, but he kept his promise about giving her space to be her own person. He had his own work, his own life, his own network to manage. But he was there when she needed him, when the baby kicked for the first time, when she had a panic attack at 3 a.m. thinking about labor, when she needed someone to tell her that she was going to be okay. "You're more than okay," he told her. "You're extraordinary. I'm pregnant and terrified and have no idea what I'm doing. So is every parent. The difference is you're honest about it." At 32 weeks, Lena's water broke 3 hours into a dinner at Maria's restaurant. The panic that followed was almost funny in retrospect. Dominic going white, Maria immediately taking charge, Rosa appearing from nowhere with a bag that apparently had everything they'd need. The drive to the hospital felt both endless and too fast. Labor was exactly as terrible as everyone said it would be. 16 hours of pain that made Lena understand why some women chose never to do this again. But Dominic stayed with her through all of it, holding her hand when she needed something to squeeze, stepping back when she needed space, telling her she was strong and capable and doing amazing even when she was screaming at him that this was all his fault somehow. "I'm not even the father," he pointed out at one point. "You're here. That makes it your fault." He laughed, which made her want to hit him, which made her laugh, which helped more than any of the breathing exercises the nurses kept suggesting. At 6:47 in the morning, after more pain than Lena thought was possible for a human to endure, her daughter was born, small and red and screaming loud enough to wake the entire floor. The nurses cleaned her up, checked her over, and then placed her in Lena's arms. The world stopped. Lena looked down at this tiny person she'd made, this miracle that had survived everything thrown at them both, and felt something break open in her chest. Love so fierce it was almost violent. Protection so absolute she'd burn the world down before letting anyone hurt this child. "She's perfect," Dominic said softly, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "She's ours," Lena corrected. Then, realizing what she'd said, looked up at him. "I mean, if you want, I want." His voice was rough. "If you're offering, I want to be her father. Want to be part of her life and yours in every way you'll let me. Even the 3 a.m. feedings? Especially those. I've heard that's when all the important bonding happens." "Basas sobas." Nah. They named her Elena Grace. Elena for the woman Dominic couldn't save. Grace for the second chance they'd both been given. She was 8 pounds of fury and need, and perfect tiny fingers that gripped Lena's thumb like she was afraid to let go. "You're stuck with me now," Lena told her daughter. "But I promise to do better than my mother did, better than I did with your biological father. I promise to see you and hear you and never make you smaller just to make my life easier." Rosa cried when she met Elena. Maria brought enough food to feed an army. Marcus showed up with a stuffed bear that was bigger than the baby and looked absolutely terrified holding her. Patricia sent flowers and a card welcoming Elena to the world with a note that the trust fund she'd set up in the baby's name should cover college and then some. The first week home was chaos. Elena didn't sleep unless someone was holding her. She needed to eat constantly. She cried for reasons Lena couldn't always figure out. But Dominic was there for all of it, learning to change diapers and warm bottles and walk endless circles around the apartment at 2 a.m, singing off-key lullabies that somehow worked. "You're good at this, Lena said one night, watching him rock Elena to sleep. "I'm terrified every second that I'm going to break her." "That's how I know you're good at it. The ones who aren't scared are the ones who mess up." At 6 weeks postpartum, Lena and Dominic were in the apartment's kitchen attempting to eat dinner while Elena slept in her bassinet nearby. The exhaustion was real and bone deep, but so was the contentment. This was her life now. Messy and chaotic, and nothing like what she'd imagined when she married Adrian. It was so much better. "I've been thinking," Dominic said, setting down his fork, "about us, about what this is." Lena's stomach dropped. "Okay. I love you. I love Elena. I want to be part of your lives in every way possible." He took a breath. "But I also know we did this backwards. We're building a life together while figuring out if we actually work as a couple. And I think we should make it official." Official how? He pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, nothing like the flashy diamond Adrian had given her. Marry me. Not because you need protection or security or someone to help with the baby. Marry me because we're building something real here. Something honest. Something worth making permanent. Uspa. Lena looked at the ring, at Dominic, at the baby sleeping peacefully nearby. 6 months ago, she'd been trapped in a marriage that was killing her slowly. Now she was being offered a different kind of marriage entirely. One built on choice instead of need. On partnership instead of control. Yes, she said, but on one condition. Name it. We do this as equals. No more of you making decisions to protect me. No more of me deferring to you because you're the one with power and resources. We're partners. Actual partners. That means we fight when we need to fight, and we compromise when we need to compromise, and we're honest even when it's hard. I can do that. It'll be messy. Good. I'm tired of things being perfect and fake. Give me messy and real any day. They married 3 months later in Maria's restaurant, with Rosa as witness and Marcus providing security that was probably excessive, but made them all feel better. Elena wore a white dress that she immediately spit up on. Lena wore blue because she was done with traditions that didn't mean anything to her. Dominic wore a suit and looked at her like she was the only person in the room. It wasn't a big wedding, wasn't formal or fancy or anything like the production her first wedding had been, but it was real. Every word of the vows they wrote themselves, every promise they made, every moment of it belonged to them and no one else. I promise to see you, Lena said during her vows, even when it's hard, even when you're being difficult, even when we're fighting, I promise to never make you smaller to make my life easier. And I promise to choose you every day for as long as we both want to be chosen. I promise to be honest, Dominic said, even when the truth is ugly, even when it would be easier to lie. I promise to give you space to be your own person and to be there when you need someone to lean on. And I promise to love you and Elena with everything I have, for as long as you'll let me. They kissed, and Elena screamed, and everyone laughed, and Lena felt something settle in her chest that might have been happiness, real happiness, the kind that came from choosing a life instead of having one chosen for you. A year later, Lena published her first novel. It was a thriller about a woman who disappeared from an abusive marriage and built a new life with the help of a mysterious stranger. It sold modestly but got good reviews. People said it felt real, authentic, like the author had lived through something and survived to tell the story. They weren't wrong. Dominic expanded his network, helping more women escape dangerous situations. He set up a foundation in his mother's name, funding shelters and legal aid and resources for people trying to leave. It wouldn't bring her back, but it meant her death counted for something. Elena grew into a toddler who had Lena's eyes and a stubbornness that could only have come from both her parents. She was fierce and loud and demanded the world bend to her will. Lena loved every exhausting minute of it. She's going to be trouble, Dominic said one afternoon, watching Elena refuse to take a nap with impressive determination. Good. The world needs more women who make trouble. You would say that. I learned from experience, trouble is how you survive. Sometimes Lena thought about the woman she'd been. The one who stood on that 40th floor balcony holding a pregnancy test and waiting for a husband who never came home. The one who disappeared so completely she wasn't sure she'd ever existed at all. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone she used to know but couldn't quite remember being. She didn't miss her. She didn't miss the penthouse or the expensive clothes or the life that looked perfect from the outside while destroying her from within. She didn't miss Adrian or his lies or the person she'd become to survive being married to him. What she had now was better, harder, messier, more complicated, but real. A husband who fought with her instead of controlling her. A daughter who would grow up knowing she was wanted. A life built on choices instead of obligations. It wasn't perfect. Dominic still had nightmares about his mother. Lena still had moments when she'd freeze up, expecting punishment for speaking her mind. They fought sometimes, real fights, where they said things they regretted and had to work through anger and hurt. But they fought fair. And they always came back to each other. That was the difference, Lena thought. The thing that made this marriage work when her first one had failed. They kept choosing each other. Every day. Even when it was hard. Even when it would be easier to walk away. Love wasn't the grand gesture, wasn't the expensive ring or the perfect wedding or the fairy tale ending. Love was choosing someone in the small moments, making coffee the way they liked it, staying up when they needed to talk, holding their hand through the hard parts, seeing them at their worst and deciding they were worth the work. That's what Dominic had done for her. Seen her at her absolute lowest, broken and desperate and carrying another man's child, and decided she was worth saving, worth protecting, worth building a life with. And that's what she'd done for him. Seen past the danger and the violence and the darkness to the man underneath who'd spent 20 years trying to save people because he couldn't save his mother, who carried guilt like a second skin but kept trying anyway, who loved with an intensity that was almost frightening but never cruel. They were both damaged, both scarred, both carrying trauma that would probably take a lifetime to fully process. But they were healing, together, building something new from the broken pieces of who they used to be. On Elena's second birthday, they stood in the garden where Dominic had first told Lena he was falling in love with her. Their daughter was running in circles, high on cake and attention, laughing like the world was made of joy. Rosa was chasing her with patient amusement. Maria was setting out more food because that's what she did when she loved people. Happy? Dominic asked, pulling Lena close. Deliriously, she leaned into him. You? More than I ever thought possible. He kissed the top of her head. Thank you. For what? For walking into that restaurant? For being brave enough to leave? For choosing this life with me, even though it was terrifying? He turned her to face him. For seeing me and not running away. Thank you for being someone worth staying for. They watched Elena play, this miracle they were raising together. This fierce, stubborn, perfect little person who would grow up knowing she was loved, who would never have to disappear to survive, who would learn from her mother that leaving was sometimes the bravest thing you could do, and from her father that protecting the people you love was worth any cost. The sun was setting, painting the garden in gold and amber. Music drifted from inside where someone had put on jazz. The air smelled like late summer and possibility. Lena thought about the woman she'd been, the one who'd felt invisible, who'd shrunk herself down to fit into someone else's life, who'd believed the lie that she was nothing without a man to give her value. That woman was gone. Had vanished the night Lena walked out of that penthouse and into the unknown. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth wasn't tied to being perfect or quiet or small. Someone who'd learned that love meant choosing and being chosen, not controlling and being controlled. Someone who'd found her way home by first having the courage to disappear. I love you, she told Dominic. Simple words, but true. I love you too. He pulled her closer. Both of you. Always. Elena ran over demanding to be picked up, and Dominic lifted her easily. The three of them stood there in the garden as the sun set and the party continued around them. A family that had been built from broken pieces but held together with something stronger than perfection, with honesty, with choice, with the kind of love that saw all the damage and decided it was worth the work of healing. Lena had spent 3 years disappearing in a marriage that was killing her. Now she spent every day becoming more visible, more real, more herself. It wasn't a fairy tale, wasn't a perfect happy ending tied up with a bow. It was better, it was real. And real, Lena had learned, was worth everything.